Hi, and welcome to IndieVoices. I'm Howard Lovy, Managing Editor of the Alliance of Independent Authors. Each month, I feature guests who have taken different paths through indie publishing. Today, I'll talk to Carrie Noga, an author who began her writing journey at Amazon, and Claire Rudy Foster, who is crowdfunding her new book featuring LGBTQ characters. And of course, my co-host Dan Holloway will update us on the news from the indie publishing world. I'm here with Carrie Noga, an author who happens to live in my hometown of Traverse City, Michigan, so we're speaking to each other in our own makeshift studio rather than Skype. Welcome to IndieVoices, Carrie.
Hi, Howard. Thanks for having me.
So it's a beautiful area here off the shores of Lake Michigan with, I think, a disproportionate amount of writers. And you can't throw a stick around here without either hitting a yoga instructor or a writer. So why do you think this community is so full of writers?
Oh, so full of artists. It's full of artists of all stripes, visual artists, literary artists, performing artists. Part of that, I think, is the fact that the area itself is such a draw for people because of its beauty. They want to be here, but maybe they don't have anything to do here, so they have to make something for themselves.
Right.
So it's a DIY economy, and so that lends itself to, again, artists of all stripes, particularly writers.
Right, and the gig economy, right. Now, we're actually going to get back to this for most of you who aren't from Traverse City, Michigan. It's a plug for my town, but also we're going to get back to the issue of what people do in this area. So I want to talk about your work, but also how you got to where you are. And although your current publisher is more like a traditional publisher, you've also gone the indie route.
Yes.
When we first came into contact, when I was at a book review magazine, and your first work, Sparrow Migrations, really stood out. It's beautifully written. You covered everything from autism to The Miracle on the Hudson. But you wrote it as part of a NaNoWriMo project at first, right?
Yes, I did, in 2010.
Tell me more about how that process worked for you.
Oh, sure. Love Nano. So I'll just get that out there. And I know it has a bit of a double-edged sword reputation in the literary community, but I had 2 failed attempts at writing a novel under my belt or on my hard drive back in 2010. And my background is in journalism. I was a journalism major in college. I worked as a newspaper reporter for 10 years. And so after 2 strikes, I thought, why don't I apply the model of the deadline, which worked so well for me, enabled me to earn a living for a decade, right, to my novel writing efforts. And for those who don't know, Nano is the worldwide effort where folks attempt to write a 50,000-word novel in the month of November. It's 1,667 words per day during the 30 days of November, and so I just gave it a try, and it worked. There are a number of other things, but I think that forced deadline was the number one reason why I finally got to the end of the book. Right,
that's what I need to, a forced deadline. I come from the journalism world too, and I can make a deadline if my job depends on it. But then, when it comes to my own writing, one deadline will pass and another deadline will pass. So NaNoWriMo really does give you that self-discipline.
It did.
All right, so let's follow this along now. So the book was originally self-published through Amazon?
Yes, through CreateSpace and Kindle Direct Publishing.
Okay. And then later, it really stood out. Lake Union later picked it up.
Yes, yep.
And now they're publishing your new book called The Orphan Daughter.
Correct, yep.
And so can you talk a little bit about how that shift came about how you got the attention of Amazon's imprint?
Sure. So, yes, you're correct. I originally self-published it in April of 2013. That was after having tried the traditional route of try to get an agent who finds you a publisher. I had a few requests for the manuscript, but they all wound up ultimately being, it's not right for me. And at the time, I didn't know I had a second book in me. And so I thought, I want to get this book out there. And, I didn't see the point of continually querying for something that might be a one-time effort. And self-publishing was getting cheaper, thanks to Amazon, faster and better. The product was looking better. So I decided to go for it. And the process of winding up with a more traditional publisher is what I call a smart luck. You've heard of dumb luck. Once I decided to self-publish, I was all in with it. I set my goals, I set my budget, and I didn't just put it out there and wait. So I held events. I was fortunate in this small community of Traverse City. I did have a traditionally published nonfiction book from several years ago, and also my journalism work. They knew me in the bookstores.
Right. I see your work is in the local bookstore.
Yeah. So they knew that there was something there, that it wasn't going to be poorly edited. It wasn't going to be full of grammatical mistakes, those kinds of things. So I had that going for me. But then I really experimented, and back at that time, 2012, 13, 14, Amazon was offering lots of new promotional tools that you could try on their website, particularly with the ebook editions. And it was during a particular promotion that they offered, which I took advantage of, that it literally, I'm told, popped up on the recommended for use list of my now editor. And she saw that I had a fairly good number of reviews and enthusiastic reviews. So she's like, hey, I'll try this, for 99 cents, I think it was. And she liked it. And so she wound up cold contacting me and making me an offer. This was about a year and a half later. So it was in the fall of 2014. So I had been working to get reviews. If anyone ever happened to mention to me, hey, I liked your book. I really liked your book. I'd say, would you mind turning that into a review on Amazon or Goodreads? And a surprising number of them did.
Right. So it wasn't pure luck. You made your own luck too.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, and was taking that step. Sometimes writers can be a little shy. Oh, thank you, and you move on with your day. But asking them to take that step, post the review for you, and then the reviews accumulate, and then that got me into able to do more promotions. And that one particular one that I had done with my ebook. Generated a lot of downloads, which then boosts it up in the rankings, and Amazon thinks, oh, there's something here, so people are paying attention to this, and they'll push it out for you.
So let's talk about the orphan daughter. And it sounds like there are many themes. You mentioned grief and second chances, and I think many people can relate to both in one way or the other.
Sure. So the orphan daughter, the main plot line is a woman's second chance at motherhood when she becomes the guardian to her orphaned niece. So that's the plot. That is what happens. But then the themes, as you mentioned, are grief and second chances. Jane, the aunt, has a grown son, and she regrets that she wasn't the mother she felt she could be to him. That's due to having had a stillbirth when her son was a toddler, and she can't forgive herself for not being able to get over that first loss. And I think many women, and this is a woman's fiction novel, can certainly relate to that. And Lucy hauls her own baggage from New York City to Traverse City. The novel set here in our lovely hometown. And she's hurting. This is nothing like she's a bilingual Spanish and English fluent child. Her parents were an on-air and executive at Telemundo. So this is like nothing she's ever seen, to live in very rural, homogeneous northern Michigan. And so she has to overcome grief a couple different ways: grief for her parents, grief for her home, and see what she can do to move on here.
So yeah, you mentioned northern Michigan, which is a vacation area, but it also has its roots in agriculture. We have the Cherry Festival every year.
Yes.
Which started out as a cherry festival, and now it's this big carnival thing that's gotten out of control. But often forgotten are the Latino migrant workers who pick the cherries. And your book deals with this in a very contemporary way, right?
Yes, it does, with the migrant community here in northern Michigan. And so as I mentioned, Lucy is half Mexican. She's Mexican-American. Her father was from Mexico and became a citizen, and her mother is an American. And she knows Spanish from her home life. So when she comes here to northern Michigan, her aunt runs a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, and kind of bridging the gap between Jane and Lucy is Miguel. And he is a former migrant worker who was based on a real-life incident here from several years ago, a deportation, when kind of the classic pre-DACA situation where someone was brought here as a child, grew up here, knew only this, graduated from high school, was by all accounts living, a fine private life. But then was picked up and deported. Mm-hmm. And so that was an incident chronicled back in our local weekly back in 2011. And I was really fascinated by this. And with Miguel's character, I kind of looked at the opposite side of that. I was like, what if you were the one who was left behind when the whole rest of your family was deported? Because the situation I have set up is that he came to northern Michigan as a migrant worker with his family. And he was born here. His parents were coming here. With he and his siblings, he happened to have the luck to be born north of the border. So he's an American. The rest of his parents wind up being deported, and of course he has to work to support them, because there's not much work back in Mexico. So he works on Jane's CSA. He befriends Lucy. He shares the language with her. He understands the grief that she has coming to this new place with no family. And then there are another migrant worker character couple, Juan and Esperanza, who come up for the season. And Esperanza in particular kind of befriends Lucy. She's also in between age-wise Lucy and Jane. And then there's the question, can Juan and Esperanza stay? Should they stay? And I keep that a little bit ambiguous in the book. I'm hoping the reader will consider that question.
It sounds fascinating. It's unfortunately a drama that's going on around the country right now, and probably in a more hidden way up here in northern Michigan, where you don't think about these problems happening, but below the surface, the agricultural workers are going through this drama right now.
Right, and it reverberates into the local farmers. If they don't have that workforce, that experienced, knowledgeable workforce, and it's cherries and it's grapes too. That's another big crop up here. To take care of those crops, their product is not going to be up to snuff. It's not going to be the quality they want.
So you've gone on a journey the past few years, since I've known you, from your NaNoWriMo to self-published to now traditionally published. What advice do you have for other indie authors on perseverance?
Sure. Yes. I think knowing your goals is and they may change. With Sparrow Migrations, as I said, my goal is to get a novel finished, and then get that book published. I had talked to many authors that would say, it took me 5 years to get an agent. It took me 7 years. I don't want to spend that many years. Again, as I mentioned, I wasn't sure if I even had another book in me. An agent would want you for a lifetime. I want to get this book published. So that helped me choose the self-publishing path. Then I set goals for that. I wanted to break even financially. I didn't want to get rich. I wanted to learn something, and I wanted to have fun with it. Those are my three goals. Even if you were, and you hear this a lot now, even if you're a best-selling, Big Five published author, you are going to have to get out there and do the marketing. The author is as much what's being sold as the book,
right?
Which may be is dismaying to old school types, but there it is. It's the reality. People like people. And so I think knowing that would help indie authors sort of get straight to with what they want to do.
Well, great. Sounds like you're on your way. Again, your previous book was Sparrow Migrations, and The Orphan Daughter is coming out in May.
Yes, May 8th.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Howard.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
My next guest is Claire Rudy Foster, an author I've seen just explode with creativity in the past few years. I first knew her as a book reviewer when I edited a book review magazine. I could give Claire anything, any kind of book, from erotica to economics, and she would always provide a well-written, well-thought-out review. So it's no wonder that she's become a prolific author in her own right. In 2016, she published a story collection called I've Never Done This Before. And she has a new collection coming out called Shine, 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 published by Unbound, which is a kind of crowdfund, traditional publishing hybrid. Hi, Claire, and welcome to IndieVoices.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Well, before we get into your current work, tell us a little bit about your particular journey as an author so far.
Oh, man, it has been a journey. Some of the best advice I got when I was starting out as a writer was don't sell yourself short, but don't expect to have too many offers coming out of the chute. I've been writing for years, and it feels like only recently have I started to sort of step into the spotlight and get some attention.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, my friend Paul, who's fabulous, jokes, Claire is everywhere, and it feels like that now. But for years I've written and submitted and contributed to many different sources, and it feels like it's finally coming together.
Right. People see you explode on the scene, but they don't see the hard work that's gone in for practically a lifetime before then.
That's true.
So tell us about Unbound, which sounds like a kind of combination of crowdfunding and traditional publishing. You were chosen by Unbound, similar to a traditional publisher, but where and how does the crowdfunding portion come into play?
Yeah, Unbound is a really interesting publisher. I became aware of them when I reviewed their book, The Wake, a few years ago, which is phenomenal. They got longlisted for the Man Booker for The Wake, and I was just stunned by how quirky and individual of a book that was. It was really one of a kind. The way that it works is after your book has been accepted by an editor, vetted, you've submitted some content to them for marketing, essentially what you're doing is doing all of the pre-sales up front. So this is in many ways no different than any other independent press, where you would be running around, hoofing it, trying to get people to buy your book. The difference is that once you meet your pre-sale goal, the book is fully funded. Unbound can afford to print and distribute your book, and then everybody who did a pre-sale gets their pledge package, essentially.
What if you don't make your goal?
Everybody gets their money back.
Right. But so there's still no guarantee of the book being published?
No. Fortunately, the goal that Unbound sets is pretty low, and I would say that it's comparable, again, very comparable to another indie press like Interlude or Riptide or one of those. We're still looking at, a pre-sale of maybe 500 copies. Right, so the difference is that instead of people waiting and saying, well, I'll pick it up when it's on the shelf, or I'll buy it at the book fair, you need to buy it up front.
Right, okay.
That's the biggest difference.
Do they promote it at all for you, or
they do.
This is your family and friends primarily?
No, they promote it as well. I'm doing my usual legwork.
Right. Well, I see you all over social media.
I am.
Yeah. So how hard is it to come up with these awards for donations?
We've got the tote bag and the mug, which I think is pretty standard. But what makes this special is that I've just added a special gimme, where if you donate a copy to an LGBTQ group, I will sing you a song on my ukulele.
Oh, great. That sounds great. Wonderful.
It's not much, but it's something I can do that, isn't more material to read necessarily, and it isn't something that's run of the mill. It is shall we say, unique.
Well, do you take requests like
I
play
do.
Freebird?
Freebird, Wagon Wheel. Sure, why not?
All right. Well, let's move on to the good stuff, the content of your book. As you know, I've been covering indie books for a little while, and I've learned that even though they can be a little rough around the edges, what you often get is something more authentic. Especially when it comes to voices that are otherwise marginalized. Mm. And you specialize in writing about a couple of groups who are considered on the fringes of society for different reasons, those covering from addiction and the LGBTQ community. So tell us how you go from the personal to the universal in your writing.
Oh, that's a great question. How do I go from the personal to the universal? Well, Howard, I'd have to say that I'm just a child of the universe.
Good answer. Good answer.
Well, it's a pat answer, but it's true. I mean, I don't, I think that when you are writing outside of the center, I mean, I don't see myself as a marginalized person. I'm the center of my universe. So for me, all of my stories are filtered through the lens of my personal experience. I have been in recovery from addiction for over a decade. I'm out as a queer trans author. So those are my perspectives. I feel like when I'm writing, I don't really acknowledge another perspective. I mean, how could it be anything else? So for me, I'm not a straight author trying to humanize my queer characters. I'm writing characters who experience, the full spectrum of human emotion, in a particular way.
Now, in Shine, 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 you emphasize that these stories all have happy endings. And is this a direct reaction to a kind of expectation in popular literature and movies that LGBTQ people are tortured souls in many ways?
Oh, yes. Now, as a disclaimer, it's not all happy endings. It's no sad endings.
No, I gotcha. Okay.
No sad endings. Yeah. I noticed, when I was reading and sort of coming out and studying and, that whole process of self-realization that I think everybody goes through, I noticed that there were no people like me in the books I was reading. I saw fragments of myself. I saw, tortured gay characters who committed suicide or, sank really deeply into addiction. I saw the friendly gay next door who would come over and fix your hair for you and give you some love advice, or your nice married gay neighbors who were just really great guys. But that was it. And that's a really two-dimensional approach to character. Also, many of the stories that I read that were about gay characters or queer characters were written by straight people. And so they felt incomplete to me. It
Right.
just felt like something was missing. And I kept thinking, is this it? Is this how you see me? Is this all that I am to you? Am I a prop? Am I just a supporting actor? And so my stories in this collection really came out of a desire to not only see myself, but to represent something more than was already there.
Well, I can't think of a better reason to write a book than to find something that isn't there, that doesn't exist yet, or there isn't enough of. And rather than searching and searching for it, you write it yourself.
Yep. Build your own.
Yeah, I know it's being said a lot these days, but it's very important for you to see a little bit of yourself in something you're reading.
Yes, that's an important experience, though. Once you see yourself, you cannot unsee it.
Right.
I mean, and that's been so important for me, too. I mean, I stayed in the closet for years, and honestly, writing this collection was part of me coming out. Because once I saw myself on the page, I couldn't unsee it, and I couldn't deny what I am. So writing this has really given me the courage to step out and say, look, I'm not just writing this because it's of interest to me. I'm writing this because it is me. And here is a piece of me, and I hope that you see yourself here, too.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but do you have a short passage of the book you could read to us?
I do. I have it here. This is from Roommates, and I will just read one paragraph for people who are interested. The entire story is on my website at unbound.com. So this is from Roommates. I have perfected the art of acting straight. In locker rooms or when I'm shopping or even on the street, I know how to talk to women in a way that suggests I am like you and I am not a threat. The best way to do it is to sweeten my voice, make it higher, and offer compliments that include the words, so cute. I always mention my boyfriend, who is an imaginary person, or my partner, who doesn't exist unless I close my eyes and I see Amanda, taking up the whole bathroom, or leaving her clogs in the middle of the floor, or scrolling through the Humane Society website and crying because of all the dogs nobody will adopt, or forgetting to put the groceries away so that the frozen things all melt into separate lumps in their plastic and cardboard containers, or making my bed for me as a surprise and leaving a handful of pansies in the middle of it, or feeding me a bite of buttercream frosting on the end of her special icing spatula. 6 years of both our names on the mailbox.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for reading that to us. And thank you so much for appearing on IndieVoices.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye, Claire.
Bye.
Dan Holloway is a novelist, poet, and spoken word artist, and he also gives us news from the indie publishing world every month. Now, before we talk about the news, let's talk about you and tell us what you've been up to this month.
I've been up to a lot, but what I thought I'd do, because obviously it's quite a significant day today. As everyone knows, Stephen Hawking died last night,
Right,
and because he's obviously author of one of the best-selling books of all time, there is a literary connection there. So I thought it might be fitting to start with a poem I wrote, sort of as a tribute. You can feel free to edit it out if it's too.
No, and I'm a Stephen Hawking fan from way back.
Excellent. And I would say before I start that I would encourage everyone to actually read A Brief History of Time. The idea that it's difficult is a complete myth spun by the media. It's a really great book. Okay, so this is a poem. It's called No Black Hole Here. The clocks have not stopped. The heavens did not wrinkle or fold. The shock we feel is simply the arrow of time reminding us we, like the stars, will grow old. Laws are no different today for not having you here to transcribe them. Our questions no more, no less profound. The universe remains no less, no more indifferent. Entropy's tendrils claw as relentlessly today as yesterday, unknitting us as they did you and moving on. Each unstitched thought's decaying light a reminder you are gone. That we know the redness of recent wounds will surely shift, that we know no singularity was here, that we know beyond the horizon of your words while all around disintegrates the laws whose stories they told do not. That knowledge, which too will cool and calm, that it crackles, kindles for a moment, now, that is enough. There, so that's the poetry done.
Wow, that's beautiful. And very fitting for a beautiful mind, as they say. And, it's toward the end of Stephen Hawking's life, he gave us a little warning about AI, too.
Yes, I was thinking about that today. I was thinking we could have done with him around the next few years to keep reminding us.
He was very inspirational to me. I used to be a science writer in another journalism life. And, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a big loss for everybody. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about romance.
Oh, good. Yes.
And it sounds like what's happening right now with Audible has all the twists and turns of real romance. Romance authors love Audible. Romance authors hate Audible. Bring us up to date on their relationship status.
Yeah, I think that the relationship is certainly not at a happy ever after stage yet. I think we're pretty much at the stage where, as people might gather, Audible Romance is it's an eat as much as you like subscription service for romance authors. So you can it's like the main Audible subscription. You pay a subscription fee and you can read as many books as you want, and authors get paid according to how much time people spend listening.
Right. And
there's been quite a lot of kickback because when the first month's royalty statements came out, people were finding that they were getting paid not very much. They were getting paid, I think, about $1.50 for a book, which is like 10-15 hours. Whereas if they had the book bought, then the royalties they would have got would have been sort of 5 or 10 times that amount. And in particular, people didn't like the fact that this differential, when you compare it to Kindle Unlimited, was really unfavourable. Audible have stepped in and they've sort of had an emergency pot that they've put in place to increase the payments a little bit. But I don't think we're any closer to an overall resolution. There's been quite a lot of interesting talk about why this is the case. Nate Hoffelder on Digital Reader has made some interesting comments about this is people using the skip to the good bits function.
Right. So, and that's a particular problem, or maybe not a problem, or a feature of romance, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not to do with it. It's more just, I mean, every book has skip to the good bits things. It's just it's a problem because I think the algorithm isn't yet clever enough to know that people haven't actually read to that point. So it pays the author by where the person is in the book, whether or not they've listened all the way up to that point. And that means that a lot more minutes have been listened to than they would have anticipated when they put the scheme in place.
But the problem really isn't Audible or Romance itself, but figuring out subscription service models, right?
Yeah.
Hasn't Audible been the only real successful subscription book service? Nobody else has really nailed the Netflix for books thing.
You mean audiobooks? Because certainly
Audiobooks,
Kindle Unlimited would be for ebooks. I mean, Wattpad has done something. I'm not sure of the figures on that. I would imagine if Wattpad have done it, they've actually done it really well, because they do everything really well. But they keep things quite quiet, and they have a very dedicated fan base, but they don't shout about it.
Well, I guess the other point is there's really nothing romance authors can do about it at this point.
No.
There's Audible, and then there's Audible.
Yeah, exactly. That's the real problem that we have. If you pull your... Well, first of all, there's the fact that if you signed up for this, you've locked yourself in for 7 years, so pulling out of it isn't straightforward. But not signing up for it in the first place, there's Findaway Voices on Kobo, but it doesn't give you subscription to this level. It is, like you say, it's Audible or Audible.
It may be that the future is in blockchain, which could make the subscription service obsolete. And it can be encoded into the blockchain that every time a writer sneezes on his mother's birthday, he gets a bonus. And last month, we talked to the CEO of Publica, which is experimenting with blockchain for books. And that company just threw its first book up into the blockchain. How did that go for them?
It was really fun. You know what the first book was, I'm assuming?
No, what was it?
It was Around the World in 80 Days.
Wonderful.
Which is a really nice touch. And they've been following its progress. It's really interesting. The stuff they've done this month has been a lot more interesting than everything they've done before. So I'm starting to be quite a lot more interested in what they're doing. They've also put up their idea for a blockchain bookstore, and I like what they're saying there a lot. They're in particular focusing on the fact that you own the book, and this is what's different from what happens with pretty much everywhere else where you license the book. So from Amazon, when you download a book, when it says buy now, you don't buy now, you license the book now, and that means they can take the book away from you. Whereas with Publica, if you buy the book, you buy the book, and it's then yours.
Blockchain is enabling the true spirit of indie publishing, where this is you and only you, and not going through a middleman. So is this really a step forward in that direction?
Yes, I mean, it's once you buy the book, you get to decide what you do with it. And yes, once you sell the book, you have genuinely given it to the reader. It's not there. It really is a disintermediation. So yes, there isn't anyone else getting in. It's you straight to a person's crypto wallet, and nothing in between. And yes, that's really great. That's the sort of thing that blockchain's really meant for.
So that's true self-publishing. Although, as we know, self-publishing is kind of a misnomer. It should probably go the way of vanity press, because a good indie book already has a team of professionals behind them. And many indie authors are familiar with Readsy, and there's a new service in town called StreetLib. Tell us how that works and how it compares.
Well, StreetLib is a reasonably well-established self-publishing platform already. They seem to be very good. They will push you out. They're like Draft to Digital. They will push you out to all the major retailers and in all the major formats. And they've just issued StreetLib Marketplace, and that is designed to introduce authors to service providers, to editors, to illustrators, to copywriters, blurb writers, and so on. Where it's different from Readsy is it's not got any external validation. So whereas Readsy looked to work with people who are seasoned professionals, so you know that if it's on Readsy, you've got a certain guarantee. This works more like sites like People Per Hour. I don't know how global that is, but sites where it's an internal marketplace. So you gauge the quality of who you're working with by previous reviews. So
Right.
And the idea is they wanted it to be entirely self-contained, which is a really good idea, because it is really indie. One of the things that's slightly weird about, I mean, it's great about Readsy, but one of the things that's slightly weird about the indie world in general is the way we're indie, but we try and replicate what the traditional publishing world is doing, and we still take our cues and our QDOS from that world. and I can see why
Right.
we do it, and there's a value to it, but there's also a value to something that's completely indie and stays on its own terms and in its own environment. The problem is going to be getting enough initial traction, because obviously if you are generating reviews entirely internally, then people who are looking at the reviews before deciding whether to hire someone aren't going to do the hiring that produces the reviews that leads other people to hire them. So there's an initial traction issue that's much greater than something that's got that sort of imprimatur built in like Readsy. But if they can manage that, then it will be very interesting to see how it goes.
Well, the stakes are higher though for indie authors, because they don't have usually they don't have a huge budget, so they take a chance when they hire an editor or hire an illustrator. So it seems like that internal review process is necessary. Who's dependable, who's not?
Yeah. It's necessary. As I say, who writes the first review? That's the really key thing. And the other thing you don't want, obviously, is people pump priming it. So you don't want people going in there and hiring their mates and so gaming the system. A new system is always much easier to game than a well-established system.
Right. Oh, I'm shocked that any system like this would be gamed.
It has never happened, has it?
Now we have another guest who started out self-publishing with Amazon, but then it was picked up by Lake Union Press, which is more of a traditional publisher, but it's also Amazon. So you make it as a self-publisher, and then you're plucked up by the same company. Are we all just living in the United States of Amazon right now?
Yes. I don't know what to say other than yes. It's a really strange one. I mean, it's not new. I remember after years and years of hammering at them to do it, The Guardian started running a series of articles on self-publishing authors about 3 or 4 years ago. And literally of the first 6 authors they ran, 5 of them had been part of Amazon's White Glove program. One of the interesting things I highlighted at some point, I think it was in this last month in my column, was a study of the Amazon bestseller list showed at one point that 8 out of the 10 top bestsellers were Amazon imprint published books. Mm-hmm. And when Amazon has control over Amazon Marketplace or Amazon marketing services, and over the charts, and over its algorithm, and over the publishing house, then it's very easy to see how it's end-to-end Amazon. If you're up in its programs, then convincing us that we have an equal shot at being marketed alongside Amazon imprint authors, there's a lot of trust to be gained there that I don't think is being gained. But like you say, with Audible, it's a one-horse game. So if people pull from Amazon, they're not going to. Most people aren't going to do it. So you're stuck with them, but you also know that you're getting second-tracked when it comes to their marketing and their promotion compared to their in-house authors. So it's not the healthiest of systems, I don't think. That's probably the polite way.
So we need an indie publishing revolution within the indie publishing revolution.
There's room for lots of revolutions. You can never have too many of them.
That's right. Okay. Well, with that, I think we'll end it for now. We had the update on the news. We had some poetry. We'll dedicate this one in the memory of the great Stephen Hawking.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed.
All right. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks, Howard. Thank you.
Bye. You've been listening to Indie Voices with me, Howard Lovy, Managing Editor of the Alliance of Independent Authors. Thank you to my guests, Carrie Noga and Claire Rudy Foster, and my co-host, Dan Holloway. Find more author advice and tools at our Self-Publishing Advice Center, selfpublishingadvice.org. And if you haven't already, we invite you to join our organization and become a self-publishing ally. You can do that at allianceindependentauthors.org. Now, what are you waiting for? Go write and publish.